Saladin, the Lion of Islam. A star rises in Tikrit, 1137–1138. In the dusty, sun-scorched town of Tikrit, nestled along the Tigris River, a child was born in 1137 or 1138 to a Kurdish family of modest but respected standing. His name was Yusuf ibn Ayyub, later known to the world as Salahuddin Ayyubi, or Saladin. The exact date of his birth remains shrouded in the mists of time, but the world he entered was one of turmoil and ambition. The Islamic world was fractured, with rival caliphs in Baghdad and Cairo, and the Crusader states, established after the First Crusade, cast a shadow over the Levant. Tikrit, a fortified settlement under Seljuk control, was a fitting cradle for a man destined to become a unifier and warrior. Saladin's father, Najmuddin Ayyub, was a capable administrator and military man, serving as governor of Tikrit under the Seljuk governor Biruz. His mother's identity is less clear, a silent figure in the historical record, but her Kurdish heritage tied Saladin to a proud people known for their resilience. The Ayyub family's fortunes were modest but stable, their loyalty to the Seljuks offering them a foothold in a volatile world. Yet, a dramatic event in Saladin's infancy would shape his family's path. A scandal, some sources suggest Ayyub sheltered a fugitive or committed a grave error, forced the family to flee Tikrit. They found refuge in Mosul, under the protection of Imaduddin Zengi, a powerful Atabeg and one of the first Muslim leaders to challenge the Crusaders. In Mosul, young Yusuf grew up in a world of warriors and scholars. The Zengid court was a crucible of ambition, where military strategy mingled with Islamic learning. Yusuf was not the eldest son, that honor belonged to his brother Shirkuh, but he was bright, observant, and drawn to both the sword and the Quran. His early years were spent absorbing the values of his faith, justice, mercy, and the duty to protect the Ummah, the Muslim community. These ideals, instilled in the bustling markets and mosques of Mosul, would define his life. Damascus and the Seeds of Destiny, 1140s–1150s. By the 1140s, the Ayyub family relocated to Damascus, a jewel of the Islamic world, after Zengi's conquests expanded his influence. Damascus was a city of contrasts, its gardens bloomed with roses and jasmine, while its walls bristled with the tension of a region under siege. The Second Crusade, launched in 1147, brought European armies to the city's gates, led by Conrad III of Germany and Louis VII of France. Though the crusade failed, it left an indelible mark on young Yusuf, now in his early teens. He saw the Crusaders not as invincible knights but as foreigners who could be defeated with unity and strategy. Under his father's and uncle Shirkuh's guidance, Yusuf trained in the arts of war and governance. He learned to wield a sword, ride with the grace of a cavalryman, and recite the Quran with precision. But he was no mere soldier. His education included poetry, theology, and the intricate politics of the Islamic world. Damascus, with its scholars and ulama, shaped him into a man who valued knowledge as much as power. Stories of his youth paint him as serious, even reserved, more comfortable in the company of books than in the raucous feasts of warriors. Yet, his quiet demeanor hid a fire, a determination to restore the honor of Islam. In 1152, tragedy struck when Imaduddin Zengi was assassinated. His son, Nuruddin, inherited his father's mantle and became Saladin's mentor. Nuruddin, a devout and disciplined leader, saw potential in the young Yusuf. He appointed Ayyub as governor of Damascus, elevating the family's status, and took Yusuf under his wing. By his late teens, Yusuf was serving in Nuruddin's court, learning the delicate balance of diplomacy and warfare. He accompanied Nuruddin on campaigns against the Crusaders, witnessing the chaos of a divided Muslim world. The Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, ruled by Shi'ite Muslims, was crumbling under corruption, while the Sunni Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad struggled for relevance. The Crusader states, Jerusalem, Antioch, Tripoli, and Edessa, exploited these divisions, thriving in the gaps. The Egyptian campaigns and rise to power, 1160s. Saladin's life took a pivotal turn in the 1160s, when he joined his uncle Shirkuh on a series of campaigns to Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate, weakened by internal strife, had become a battleground for power. The Crusader king of Jerusalem, Amalric I, sought to seize Egypt's wealth, while Nuruddin coveted it as a strategic base to encircle the Crusaders. Shirkuh, a burly and brilliant general, led Zengid forces to counter Amalric's ambitions. Yusuf, now in his mid-20s, was reluctant to leave Damascus's comforts but followed his uncle out of duty. The Egyptian campaigns were grueling. The Nile Delta's heat and disease tested the resolve of Nuruddin's army. In 1164, Shirkuh and Yusuf clashed with Crusader and Fatimid forces at Bilbais, a brutal encounter that showcased Yusuf's courage. Though not yet a commander, he fought with distinction, earning the respect of his peers. By 1169, after multiple expeditions, Shirkuh ousted the Fatimid vizier Shawar and became vizier himself, with Yusuf as his deputy. But Shirkuh's sudden death months later thrust Yusuf, at age 31, into the role of vizier of Egypt. This was the moment Saladin was born. Taking the title Salahuddin, meaning righteousness of the faith, he navigated a treacherous landscape. The Fatimid court was a nest of intrigue, with factions plotting his downfall. The Crusaders watched eagerly, hoping to exploit Egypt's instability. Saladin moved swiftly, consolidating power by replacing Fatimid officials with loyal Sunni allies. In 1171, he abolished the Fatimid Caliphate, restoring Egypt to Sunni rule under the nominal authority of the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad. This act was monumental, aligning Egypt with Nuruddin's vision of a unified Muslim front. Yet, Saladin's rise strained his relationship with Nuruddin. The older leader grew wary of his protégé's growing power, suspecting ambitions of independence. Saladin, however, remained loyal, sending tribute and maintaining diplomatic deference. He governed Egypt with a blend of firmness and fairness, reforming its economy, rebuilding its navy, and fortifying Cairo. His charisma and piety won the loyalty of his soldiers and the admiration of the Egyptian people. By the early 1170s, Saladin was no longer just Yusuf, he was a leader with a vision. The unifier of the Muslim world, 1174-1180s. Nuruddin's death in 1174 was a turning point. Without a strong successor, the Zengid Empire fragmented, leaving a power vacuum. Saladin, now 36, seized the opportunity. Declaring himself Sultan, he marched on Damascus, claiming it as his base. Over the next decade, he embarked on a relentless campaign to unify the Muslim world. Aleppo, Mosul, and other Zengid strongholds resisted, but Saladin's blend of diplomacy, marriage alliances, and military might prevailed. He married Nuruddin's widow, Ismatuddin Khatun, cementing his legitimacy, and defeated rival emirs with strategic brilliance. Saladin's vision was clear: only a united Muslim world could expel the Crusaders. He spent years consolidating power, often sparing defeated enemies to win their loyalty. His generosity became legendary, poets sang of his mercy, and even his foes admired his honor. Yet, he was not infallible. Early clashes with the Crusaders, such as the Battle of Montgassard in 1177, exposed his inexperience. The young King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, despite his leprosy, outmaneuvered Saladin, dealing him a rare defeat. Saladin learned from this, honing his tactics and biding his time. By the 1180s, Saladin's empire stretched from Egypt to Syria, encompassing much of the Levant. He built schools, mosques, and hospitals, earning the title, Patron of the Faith. His court in Cairo and Damascus buzzed with scholars, poets, and theologians. Yet, his heart remained fixed on Jerusalem, the holy city under Crusader control since 1099. The Crusaders' aggression, raids by figures like Reynald of Chatillon on Muslim caravans, fueled Saladin's resolve. Reynald's attack on a pilgrim caravan in 1187, which included Saladin's sister, was the final straw. The triumph at Hattin and the fall of Jerusalem, 1187. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, was Saladin's masterpiece. With an army of 30,000, he lured the Crusaders, led by King Guy of Lusignan and Reynald of Chatillon, into the arid hills near Tiberias. The Crusaders, parched and exhausted, were outmaneuvered. Saladin's forces cut off their water supply, set fire to the dry grass to choke them with smoke, and struck with devastating precision. The Crusader army was annihilated. Guy and Reynald were captured, and Saladin personally executed Reynald for his crimes, a rare act of retribution for a man known for mercy. Hattin opened the road to Jerusalem. City after city, Ascalon, Acre, Jaffa, fell to Saladin's forces. On October 2, 1187, Jerusalem surrendered after a brief siege. Unlike the Crusaders' bloody conquest in 1099, Saladin's entry was disciplined. He spared the city's Christians, allowing them to ransom themselves or leave in peace. Churches were converted to mosques, but the Holy Sepulchre remained a Christian shrine. His mercy stunned the Christian world, earning him admiration even from his enemies. Pope Urban III, it is said, died of shock upon hearing of Jerusalem's fall. Saladin's triumph was not just military but moral. He embodied the Islamic ideal of jihad as both a physical and spiritual struggle, fighting not for conquest but for faith. His letters to the Abbasid Caliph and European kings were eloquent, blending humility with resolve. Yet, victory brought new challenges. The Third Crusade loomed, led by Europe's mightiest kings, Richard the Lionheart, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa. The Third Crusade and the Lionheart, 1189 to 1192. The Third Crusade was Saladin's greatest test. Frederick Barbarossa drowned en route, but Richard the Lionheart, England's warrior king, proved a formidable foe. Landing in Acre in 1191, Richard retook the city after a brutal siege. Saladin, stretched thin by years of war, struggled to counter Richard's relentless energy. The two men, though enemies, shared a mutual respect, exchanging gifts and letters even as they battled. The Battle of Arsuf in September 1191 was a clash of titans. Richard's disciplined army repelled Saladin's harassment tactics, forcing a rare retreat. Yet, Saladin's strategy of attrition wore down the Crusaders. He avoided decisive battles, instead raiding supply lines and fortifying his defenses. By 1192, both leaders were exhausted. Richard, facing rebellion at home, and Saladin, grappling with dwindling resources, negotiated the Treaty of Jaffa. The agreement allowed Christians access to Jerusalem's holy sites while leaving the city under Muslim control. Saladin's dealings with Richard were marked by chivalry. When Richard fell ill, Saladin sent him peaches and snow from Mount Hermon to cool his fever. Such gestures, whether strategic or genuine, cemented Saladin's reputation as a magnanimous leader. Richard departed the Holy Land in 1192, reportedly saying, "If I had an enemy like Saladin, I would fear no other." The final years and legacy, 1192 to 1193. With the Crusaders gone, Saladin returned to Damascus, his body and treasury depleted by decades of war. He was only 55, but years of campaigning had aged him. He spent his final months governing with the same diligence that defined his life, distributing alms, praying, and planning for the future. On March 4, 1193, a fever claimed him. As he lay dying, he ordered his wealth distributed to the poor, leaving barely enough for his burial. His death was mourned across the Islamic world, from Cairo to Baghdad. Even in Europe, chroniclers like William of Tyre wrote of him with reverence, calling him a prince of great virtue. Saladin's legacy is monumental. He united a fractured Muslim world, recaptured Jerusalem, and redefined jihad as a noble struggle. His empire, though divided among his heirs, laid the foundation for the Ayyubid dynasty. His life inspired generations, from medieval poets to modern leaders. To Muslims, he remained Salahuddin, the liberator; to the West, Saladin, the chivalrous foe. His story is a tapestry of faith, courage, and humanity, woven in a time of blood and fire.